lecture today. Before we can start with what we have to do today, let's have a recap of what we did yesterday. Yesterday, we started basically a journey of how to consume web services. And we said that we have different types of web service specifications that are used to distribute this data, and this data can be consumed by users. So we said that the basic idea behind these web services is to make sure that you distribute information via well-defined service interfaces. So maybe just to get back to why we have this idea of web services, it's just because I told you that we need to make sure that we share information. So sharing information is very important. But when we're going to share information, we have barriers to sharing information. One of the barriers that we say that we can have is the technology barrier, whereby computers may not be able to communicate with each other, or even the formats can be problematic. So web services, basically, it's a good technique to make sure that the format issue is sorted out, or the format barrier is sorted out, because these web services provide us with the ability to be able to consume data without thinking about the operating system, or maybe the software, or the platform, or the development environment. So the big issue here is that web services provide us with a way how we can be able to share our information using interfaces that are well-defined and are broadly acceptable in the domain. So we say that web services are for just to help us effectively organize our geodata. And the big idea here is that you should be able to consume rather than storing. So you have data in the servers, and then the users can be able to get this data using just a link. And then we say that web services are intended to reduce redundant data storage. And this data is provided or may be presented using well-defined structures. And so we have also a transparent provision for data. So once again, we gain this interoperability, or maybe the ability to share information with each other by having them standardized. So we have basically this data being shared using an open architecture, and or maybe, so to say, a service-oriented architecture. So it's based on the W3C consortium standards, or the World Web standards, and the OGC, that's the Open Geospatial Consortium standards. And they're all standardized according to the ISO standards. And we say that we gain this ability to share information through the independence of the operating system. So you can maximize these web services. You can be able to consume them without thinking about an operating system, or a programming language, or even a development environment. So that's what we said. And then we said that there's a difference between data and a web service. A web service is anything that, any software that basically utilizes itself on the web and uses XML as a means of message transport. So that's what a web service is all about. And then we basically use the service-oriented architecture concepts to be able to share this information. We say that you have to, if you publish your web service, you have to make sure that you publish it in the service registry, and then the consumer will come and be able to access this web service. Adrian, can you share the screen? Yeah, so you have basically the service provider who publishes the web services. And then we have, try to get my arrow. Okay, so we have basically the service, moment. So we have basically the service provider who basically publishes these services, and then these services are registered in the registry. So it's like a port of the sort. And then if you want to basically access these services, you basically have to come and search for them. So these services are described using the web service description language. And once you've found the service that you want, then you can be able to get this data using SOAP messages. So what we're doing yesterday, we're trying basically to access this data using the SOAP messages. But first what happens is that you have published, the owner publishes his service, and then he has his data, rather his service in the repository, or maybe in the registry, and then you can be able to come and access this service and be able to solve your, to access the data. Now, of course, you invoke the service and use it. Once you're done with the service, you don't have to store the data. The service, of course, is still in the, published in the registry. And then we said that, this is basically the architecture. So today, I've already deposited data on your Google Classroom. You need to download it together with the GeoServer. And the only thing you need to install there will be only the Java. If you already have Java on your computer, then we're good to go. So all you need to do is to, we shall have this data, and then you have basically the server. The server allows you to be able to publish this information, and then the users can be able to access this link as a service. So they are able to, okay. Okay, please, can you ask the question? The one with the Galaxy Note? So maybe the question is going to come with time. So the thing is that you have this, you basically have the server that basically publishes the information, and then you can be able to access it over the website or even in any client. Now, okay, I try to. So we say that we have different specifications. We have the web map service, we have the web feature service, we have the web coverage service, the web processing service, the catalog service for the web. We said also we have the sensor observation service and the sensor alert service. And we have so many other services, but these are the most common ones, and they're the ones that we wish to talk about in this workshop. So we say that basically the web map service is basically a specification or a standard from the ISO. It's ISO 19128. And we said what it basically tells you is a way how to share your information. So as a raster, and then this information will be accessible over the web through HTTP protocols, but what you get is basically an image. And you can't be able to do anything with that image. You can't analyze it, you can't do so much with it. And then we say that we have the web feature service. The web feature service utilizes various standards. It uses the GML standard to bring the features, and then also it uses the style layer descriptor to be able to bring also the, to be able to style your layer. And then also it uses the filter encoding specification to be able to help people to, to help the user to be able to query data of interest. And we said what it brings actually already shaped data, and you can be able to use it even for analysis. So it brings you the points, lines, and polygons, the vector data or discrete objects. And then we said that we have the web coverage service. The web coverage service, we say that it will deliver you a coverage, also say a raster, over the internet using HTTP protocols, the GET and POST. And then there is a possibility that you can be able to query this layer and you can be able to get the pixel values. And then also we say that this layer can actually be the web processing, the layer from the the web coverage service can be used for further analysis. And then we talked about the web processing service. The web processing service, we say that you have basically algorithms that are already deposited somewhere, and then you can be able to, they're already in the server, you can be able to access them and then use them. So you can be able to invoke them and then be able to use them. So what you have to first do is that you have to ask the capability of the server for the web processing service. You ask to tell you the algorithms there, you describe them so that you can know what the inputs are for the algorithms, and then you can be able to use the algorithm, parameterize it, and then run it. The catalog service for the web is basically what the GeoPortal is based on. So we looked at the GeoPortal on the first day. So it's based on the catalog service for the web. So we also have other services, for example, the sensor observation service or the sensor alert service to be able to encode data that is captured using sensors and be able to share it. So we looked at the web map service. So you'll allow me to repeat these issues so that you can be able to understand them. We looked at the web map service, and we said that the web map service specifies the behavior of a service that basically produces spatially referenced maps dynamically from geographic information. And we say that basically what you have to do is to first send a request to the server to get to know the capabilities of the server. So the server will respond to you with an XML document and tells you the formats that they have, the data that they have, and then they will also tell you information about the coordinate systems and so many other attributes. All this, you get it through an XML document. And then we said once you know which layer to pick or to use, then you can always query the server to give you that layer. And we say that what it gives you is just basically pictorial rendering of maps in a graphic format, but you cannot be able to analyze this data. So you basically can't get actual coverage data values, but you can only get feature data. That's the information data, basically, or the info about the data. So we have basically the, so for us to think about a web map service, I've told you that it delivers data using the HTTP protocol. That is the GET or POST protocol. And then we have, of course, various versions, as we shall see. And this version, when you're specifying it in the operations, is optional. So we say that if you want to access the server, you will typically be given this link. Now, of course, some of you are asking, why did we get this link in the first place? So just for us to just for us to just to recap on what we did yesterday, we said that you basically have a portal like this one, and then they will always, when you click on the data set in the metadata, they will always tell you whether they offer it as a web service or not. So for example, whether they offer, for this they offer it as a web map service. And you basically have the link until this question mark. And then you can be able to get this link and run it in any of these client software. So for example, you can say, okay, let me try to remove this. You could say that I want to access the web map service server with this link. And then if you get the layers, you'll be able to have all these layers here. So the thing is that you can then say OK, and then you'll have these different layers that you can always drag and use. So what I'm just trying to say is that you basically need to get these URLs from the metadata catalog, or basically the registry. So that's why you need to get these layers from, or rather the links from. And then you can be able to run them in your server connector, and then you can be able to access these layers. So in other words, you don't need to keep this data on your computers. This data is only maintained by only one publisher, and then all you have to do is basically bind. So the moment we try to access this data, what we're doing, we're actually using SOAP to be able to access our data from the other server, SOAP messages. So we say that you have basically the different operations to be able to access your server. So the operation, for example, that we can think about, the first one that we think about when we are dealing with web map services, I told you, you need to know the capabilities of the server. What can the server do for you? What data does it have? In what coordinate system? For what area? So you need to know those kinds of questions. Rather answer those kinds of questions. And so you basically, what you have to do is to get this link. Is to have that link that are pasted in your Zoom, and then you paste it in your browser. Okay, just try to use this. So this is the link that we're using until the question mark. Then after the question mark, all you need to do is to basically tell us what your service is. And then you can say WMS, and then you put an ampersand sign. So the ampersand sign basically separates this key value pair. So the ampersand sign separates the key value pair. So we would, if you want maybe to have these key value pairs or these requests, you need basically to place these requests separated with the ampersand sign. And then we have to put now the request. So it can be in caps lock or maybe small case. So the key is basically not case sensitive. And then you have put the value is equal to, and then the value is case sensitive. Get capabilities. If you run this, it should be able, of course, usually they also add the version. The version is always added, but it is optional. So you can also say version. and then say equals 1.1, maybe 0.0. And then we see what happens. So it brings something, but then maybe let's say, okay, so it will bring something, and I think when you open it, it should be able to, it has something. So you can choose to have the version, or you may choose not to have the version. The version is optional. You may not put it there, it will still run. So when you look through this, you'll be able to see the formats, you'll be able to see the coordinate systems for which you can be able to access data from this server, and you can be able to see the data sets that are available. You should be able to see the data sets that are available. For example, you have this data set, and then they tell you the bounds. Now, this document that you're seeing here is similar to this. Make sure you tune the software and the client. It is similar to saying this. It is similar to having this kind of thing. So in the client, of course, you're seeing something very interesting that your eyes may be familiar with, but this is the same as the XML document that you're seeing in here. They're the same. So it will run anywhere. It will run in any client so long as there is that option to run it. So it's a platform independent, development environment independent, and then in this case, you can be able to tell the capabilities of your server. So once again, I told you that this link, I never got it just out of knowing it. I never knew it before. What I did was to go to the GeoPortal or to the metadata catalog. That's where I got that link from. And then I can be able to construct the get capabilities, get capabilities. But then also we say that the other is to describe the layer. So once you know the layers that are available from your metadata, if you know this layer that's available, it should be very possible for you to describe this layer. So that should be very possible. And then we say that once you know, of course, the capabilities, then you can pick the layer of your own interest. In other words, if you know that the server is giving these layers, it's very possible now to say, I want only this layer. It's very possible for you to say that. So it's very possible for you to say, for example, no. So you can pick the layer that you want. And I told you that the only thing you can do on this layer is basically visualize it. You can be able to overlay. And the other operation that you can do, if you want to query it, is when you click, you'll get only the info. You won't get the pixel value. You get the info about this place that you've clicked. So we have that in form of a tutorial, so you can be able to check this tutorial here. So you can be able to follow in on this tutorial, and maybe you can work at your own pace. So we say that you can also be able to get the map. So this is basically the link to get the map. Now you should notice that they tell us the service here, name. So you need to specify basically your service name. And then you can specify the version. This is another key value pair. But it is optional to do that. So you can specify this. You can also specify you have to specify the request. That's compulsory. And then also you have to specify the layers that you're dealing with. So this is the layer until here. So these are the parameters for the get map. And then also you have to specify the bounding box, very, very important. So it's basically the extent of your image, or maybe the extent of the area for which you want to retrieve. You have to specify them. And then you have to specify the width and height. You have to specify the coordinate reference system. You can change, for example, this coordinate reference system to always have the data produced in the different coordinate systems that you wish to have. And then also you need to specify the format. So these are the most important things that you have to do. So you specify the format, you specify the spatial reference system, you specify how big, that's the bounding box, and the height of the image and the width. And then you have to specify the layer that you want to pick. And then also specify the request that it's a get map request. And once you run this, it should be able to bring you something. And I told you that if you clicked anywhere, then this will only bring you the feature info. Now, you usually use these kinds of maps in web mapping, because if you're going to specify the layer, for example, in your API or in your web map, then you can be able actually to use this. You basically get the link, this whole link that we copied and pasted here, you can get it and then include it into your web map application. So you have these multiple layers overlaying with each other. So that's how basically we get these layers for web mapping. Now, we also say that we have, okay, of course, these are the many parameters I've been talking about. And then we say that some of these parameters are compulsory, some of them are not compulsory. So we say that some of them are not compulsory. For example, the request is compulsory. If you don't specify get map, you're not going to get anything. If you don't specify that the service is WMS, you're not going to get anything. And then the spatial reference system is required. The bounding box has to be specified, the width, the height. The styles are also required. So somehow in the server, they need to pre-render or pre-style this data using the style layer descriptor. And then the format is also very necessary. But then, for example, the background color or the transparency, the exceptions, or the style layer descriptor, URL, these ones are not very compulsory. So what is compulsory are these, the request, the version, the layers, the coordinate reference system, and then also the bounding box, the width and the height, the format, the styles. The other thing that we said is that you can be able to specify a request for the get feature info. So how do you specify that? So maybe in this session, you can be able to go ahead and try to specify one for this same server, knowing that you have basically to state only the request, and then you say equals, and then you rather state the request parameter and then put the value. And you separate them with an ampersand sign. So for the get feature info, what basically you're requesting for is this information. So when you want to when you say the get feature info, what you're requesting for is basically this information. So that's what basically that query would be able to do. And put basically the form in which basically it looks like. So basically you have to state the version, you state the service name, you state the request. So of course we're dealing with WMS. The request is describe layers, and then you have to place the layer here. And then you have that information about the description. So for the for the get feature info, you get the other pop-up, but then for the describe layer, you're trying to basically get more detailed information about the layer. So we've already done this, and we have basically this part one of the tutorial. We can still go back and rather continue with the tutorial and do it for those who have not yet been able to do that tutorial. So don't get out of this class when you've not done the practical. You can do it on the web, even if you don't have the software, or you can do it on the software if you have the software. So at least get away from here when you can access a web map service. Then we have the web feature service. We said that with the web feature service, what you get is basically you can request geographic features over the web using platform independent calls. So you basically get feature datasets over the web. So in other words, you could think about it like because the data is brought to you as a GML document, and it's very possible for you to query this GML document as though it was like source code. So it's very easy to play around with it and query the different parts of the GML document. So similarly, the first thing that you have to do is to ask the server, what do you have as far as this data is concerned? So you basically have to perform a get capabilities document, rather a query, so that you get a get capabilities document. And now, the thing is that it will always bring you an XML document. And then once you say, I want to get the feature, then it will bring you a GML document. Now, GML is called a geography markup language. And this geography markup language basically is it's derived out of XML. So it looks like XML, only that now it supports spatial data, or basically GIS data. So once again, you get the data as though it is a text file, which is GML. But then, of course, if you put it in the client, it will be recognized as though they are features. Now, by getting the data as though it is GML over the internet, it's a little bit, because it's text-based. First of all, it's understandable, it's tag-based, but then also, it is, it's not very heavy. It's easy to transport from one destination to another. It's based on a language that's self-describing, and it's lingua franca for everybody. So they use basically GML to be able to describe the features, or the polygons, points, lines, and polygons. And the good thing is that you can be able to transform over many coordinate systems. So this is what happens. You basically have you have basically the server somewhere installed. We are going to install this server so that you can see what happens. There's a tutorial ready. So if you can access the Google Classroom, you can go ahead and download the Geo server and be able to do your work. So we have basically the server here, and then you have basically the client. The client is now you trying to access the data. And now what happens is that you have to send a request, ask the capabilities of the server, and then to return you the capabilities document, which is an XML document. And then once you've gotten all the layers, now you need to understand what basically a layer, rather any of those layers that you wish to have consists of. So basically you send a describe feature request to the server, and then it will also return you an XML schema for that feature. So it will tell you what that layer or that feature is all about. And then you send a request to the server telling it, now I need the data. And then it will bring you a GML feature collection. Now, we have two kinds of web feature services. We have, one of them is basically the, it's basically the basic web feature service, and another one is the transactional web feature service. Now, the basic feature, rather the basic web feature service allows you to make a request to the server and get that capabilities document, but then also you can be able to get the data. That's the only thing that you can be able to do. But then the transactional web feature service allows you to also insert data into the server. So you can have your data in your client and then you edit it, it will be inserted in the server. And then also it allows you to update, it allows you to be able to delete, it allows you to be able to lock features so that as you work on them, nothing happens to them. Or maybe someone can be able to see the other previous versions as you work on them, as you edit them. So that's what basically the transactional web feature service does. So we basically, let me try to show you what I'm talking about. So I'm saying that you have your web, we say that here in ArcGIS, rather it's a little bit tedious to be able to access the web feature service, so, but then we shall be able to get our tools. So you need basically to do this, and then you can be able to put your link here. This is our link. And then once you do that, it will tell you all the layers that are there. So maybe we want that. And then we can put it in this default geodatabase. And then maybe, let me just, because we already have this. And then if I run, it should be able to get us that data from the server. So that's how you do it in ArcGIS. So something has happened. We can be able to go to the server and pick our data. So this is basically what the basic web feature service will do. And this data, because it's a web feature service data, you can be able to open, for example, the table, and you see what is in the table. There is also a possibility for you to be able to use it for your further analysis now that you have it. Now, this data is gotten as though it is GML. So when it comes to the software, you see it as though it looks like a shapefile, but actually it's GML feature collection. Also, to say, let me use Quantum GIS. So I said that in Quantum GIS, according to our tutorial yesterday, all you needed to do was go to add layer. You go to layer, add layer, and then you can be able to access the web feature service. So as this maybe GeoServer, rather as Quantum GIS starts, it has started. So that's good news. So we say that all you need to do is to basically come to layer, add layer. If you want to add the Wfs layer, you just say this, and then you make your new connection. So for us, we already have the connection. So we already put this URL there. And if that's what we did yesterday, and if you want, rather you just say OK, and then you connect to the server. So it tells you its capabilities. And now you are at liberty to add this data into your map canvas, or you can even say, I want to query, because the data could be so big. For example, it's for the whole country and it's heavy. So you can actually query and only select data for maybe a particular area, and then be able to only display only that data, so that it's a little bit faster. So you can add the data. So I've added it. And when you add it, it's actually picking that data from the server as though it is GML, feature collection. But once it gets into this software, client software, it is seen as though it is a shapefile, but it's not a shapefile, it's actually GML. What you're dealing with here is GML. That's the format. And we say that GML basically looks like that get capabilities document. It's basically XML. It's a type of XML that basically supports geographic information, geographic information. So once again, we said it's based on the HTTP GET or POST protocol. And we have various versions, as you're going to see. So there are so many different versions. You'll allow me just to repeat these things so many times so that maybe you don't miss them. If you've missed something, maybe you'll be able to capture it later on. So we have the same operations almost. So you have first ask the server the capabilities, and then describe the feature type. And then you can also get your feature, just like we did in the client. And you can also do it on the web the same way. Now, this is basically the basic web feature service. And we say that for the transactional one, you can have different transactions, updating, editing, and then deleting. And then you can also lock the features. Now, I said that it's similar to what we were doing for the get capabilities document. So this document here, you see, it's we put their service is WMS. Now, in this case, for the same server, you should be able to, let me try to get the link. So for the same server, here, we should be able to construct the get capabilities document. So you basically have to type the service, and then you have basically to type equals, and then you put there, instead of WMS, we put WFS. And then you need basically to separate them with an ampersand sign. And then you need to put the request. I told you that this is not case sensitive. The key is not case sensitive. And then you say equals, but then the value is case sensitive. So it's get capabilities. And then you should be able to run it, and then to be able to tell you the data that's available. We only have one layer, interestingly. And it will tell you the format in which this data is in. So this is the document. It's an XML document. This is how XML looks like. So that's how basically the get capabilities document is obtained. And then you also have to look at basically the, we can also get describe the features. And we say that for describing the features, it's just like an SQL query to the table. When you say describe this table, or describe the elements of a table. So basically what you can also be able to achieve is basically the version, the service, rather you can be able to state the version, the service, the request, and the type name. So when you're constructing that query also, some things are actually compulsory, others are not compulsory. So some parameters are compulsory operations. So for example, the request is very compulsory, the service is mandatory, the output format is not mandatory, the type name is not mandatory, it's optional, the version is optional. So I put a link here. So once again, you copy this and then go back to your, according to our table in here, they tell you that you must have a request, you must have a service. So I'll first set my service. So I'm just trying to let you know how to construct one query, anytime. So you just type there your service, and you say is equal to, and then in this case we are dealing with WFS. And then we separate it with an ampersand sign, and then you put your request, and then you basically, the request now is describe feature type, right? So the request is describe. This is case sensitive. If you get it wrong, you won't get anything. This will work on your phones. It will also work on any browser. So we can work together. So this is how basically it's done. And then you can also put the version. So you can put the version in case you want. So we just need to look at the table and see what is compulsory. So they tell us the version is not compulsory, so you may not have it and it will still run. But maybe we can put the version just for, but you may not put it, it will still run. So the version is equal to 1.1.0 maybe. And then you say, okay, let us run and see what happens. So it provides you a document that's describing, for example, the boundaries layer that is there. So it's trying to describe all the features in that boundaries layer. So this is basically the document it provides. And you can go ahead basically now to pick the data. So you can go ahead to look at, we have a table also to help you to be able to get the features. So the next operation is for you to go now to the server and ask the server, can you give me the data? And then now it will be able to give you the data. So you basically specify, you have to specify the version, the service, the request, the type name, and you can as well filter in case you need to, and then the bounding box. So this is basically, these are the parameters that you need to specify. You need to specify the request name, that's the request is a web feature service, that's compulsory. And then the service, which is basically, the request is get feature operation, the service is web feature service, and then the type name is also mandatory. So these have to be specified for it to work. If you don't specify them, it won't work. So later on, we shall be able to generate our own web feature service layer, just like we did for our web map service online. Now we have the web coverage service. The web coverage service, we said, allows you to be able to get data from the server, and this data is basically a raster, or it's a coverage, so to say. And you can be able to access the values of that coverage and also use it for your analysis. So it's also an OGC specification as well as an ISO standard. So the web coverage service standard basically defines a standard interface and operations that enable interoperable access of geospatial coverages, and you basically get them via HTTP protocols. And when we say grid coverage, we basically mean it's just like raster, but it has values behind. For example, satellite image, digital aerial photos, digital elevation data, and other phenomena that basically are representing a continuous surface. And you have values for each measurement point. That's what a coverage is all about. So it's a raster representing a continuous surface. Now, you also have to do the same thing like you did for the web map service and the web feature service. You need also to ask the server the capabilities. Now, to the same link, you only need to change the service here and say the service now is the web coverage service, and then you have basically the capabilities of the server as the request. So in other words, for the same link here, we just need to say service is web coverage service, and we need to know the capabilities of this server, and the request is basically get capabilities. And then it will give us all the capabilities of the server. It will tell us the layers that are there, the coordinate reference system it supports, and so forth. So that's what basically the web coverage service tells us. Now, for the get capabilities document, you basically have to specify the request as well as the service. The version is optional and the rest are optional. So once again, what happens is that you're requesting the server to give you a coverage or to give you that raster that you can be able, that has values and you can be able to process it over the internet. And I already showed you in the client how it looks like. So in the client, we say that you just need to go to layer, add layer, and you go to add web coverage service, and you make your connection. So you give it any name that you wish. And then you can connect to that service, and then you'll be able to access all the layers, and you can choose which layer maybe to visualize. For example, the one for the exposure that we had yesterday, and then you'll add. This is what you get. You see that it's actually having pixel values. If you zoom in, there are pixel values. And if you choose to find out what these values are, you will basically have pixel values that will just basically show you the pixel values. Not like the web map service. The web map service was showing us the info about the area, but not the pixel values. And you can actually get this and use it in a processing algorithm and be able to solve your GIS problems. So once again, you don't need to store data because we have data services, for example, the web feature service and the web coverage service, to be able to deliver you vector and raster data respectively for analysis. And we said that the web map service was rather a portrayal service. That's what we said. And the data cannot be analyzed for web map service. But for web coverage service, you should be able to analyze that data. So if you want to get coverage data, you basically have to specify these parameters. You need also to specify, for example, the service. The version is optional. You need to specify the request. You need to specify the name of that layer. So it's the name of the coverage. You need to also specify the coordinate reference system, the bounding box. The time is optional. You need to specify the width, the height, the resolution, and then also you need to specify the format. Now what you get is basically a raster, just like we said. And this raster, of course, this raster, of course, is analyzable. Now, there are different formats that you can be able to get. You can be able to get, for example, GeoTIFF, NetCDF, and so many other formats that you can be able to access. There are so many, as we are going to see in our next practical. Now, we can also be able to get this data, and it's visualized using various interpolation methods. So this helps you to visualize it with ease without having it hang. So it breaks the data into different components and then it brings it to you on your screen very fast. That's what these interpolation methods do. Now, we have different software implementations that can be used to implement these web services. One of them is the ArcGIS server. This one you have to pay some good money to access, to access this software. So it's a software that you need to buy. And then we have, for example, the Erudas Apollo suite, the Intergraph suite. We have the Autodesk. There is also a suite for the CAD people. They also have a suite for basically web services now. So there are so many commercial products, but then we also have open source solutions. We have, for example, the UMN map server, we have Degree, we have the Geo server, we have the Threads data server, we have 52 Degrees North, and so many other servers that you can be able to utilize. For our case, we would like to use the Geo server for our illustration, the next part of the session. So we also have the web processing services. We said the web processing services allow you, they give you that standard interface to allow you to publish your geospatial processes or algorithms, so to say, in a server, and they make it very easier for someone to be able to discover them and be able to bind these processes or be able to use them to execute them. So basically what happens that you have your algorithms or calculations or models. For those people who are interested, for example, in live geography, you can be able to create your algorithms and then be able to put them somewhere in the server, and as your data comes in, this data is actually processed using these algorithms. So the web processing service would be a very good use case in this case. So the web processing service will allow you to define calculations, of course, ranging from simple ones to very complicated ones. And for example, you could have a hydrological model, you could have a vulnerability model, and you have it basically in the server, and people always come and access this model whenever you need to have it and use it. So what happens is that it allows you to be able to discover and describe the existing algorithms that are there, and then also be able to execute the processes. So this is what happens. You use basically HTTP GET and POST protocol to be able to access these algorithms, but then also you basically have the GET capability, rather you have to instruct the server, tell you the capabilities. So it brings you basically the service level metadata. It tells you we have these processes. And then it also tells you that maybe we should make one so that we can be able to see how it looks like. So we can be able to pick one of these in our tutorial. So we can be able to pick one of these. We have a link in our tutorial here for the web maps, rather web processing service. So it should be the same literally. So the service is called WPS. And then we have basically the request. Is equal to get capabilities so it brings you the capabilities of this server. So it's going to bring you all the algorithms that are in this server. And then you can be able to choose the rightful algorithm that you want to use. And it's very possible also to execute your algorithm by creating queries to the server over the web. So, in other words, what usually happens is that you have this interface, a standard that defines how all of you are supposed to access algorithms the same way. And we said that you need basically to first get capabilities of your server, and then you can describe the processes. So you can, for example, if you have an algorithm that basically creates a Voronoi polygon or diagram, then you basically ask it to tell you the parameters of that algorithm, and then maybe the output, and then maybe how to use it. So basically describe the processes. And then once you're very sure, then you can be able to execute it. Now, one of the servers that is very commonly used is the 52 degrees north. That's one of the servers that's available, and it's what we've been using. But there are so many other servers that are available. So you can also implement your own. So these are the softwares that can be able to allow you to publish web processing services, or maybe to have algorithms on the internet, and then people can be able to invoke them and then be able to use them. So for example, you have the ArcGIS server. Like I told you, this one you have to buy, or LDAS Apollo, you have to buy this. And then we have some open source solutions, for example, the 52 degrees north that you've just used. And then we have the PyQGIS WPS. It used to be called the PyWPS. It used to run in GrassGIS. But now we have also for, it has been modified, and then we can be able to run it using the QGIS server. By the way, also QuantumGIS has a server, just like GeoServer, that you can be able to use to publish your datasets. And then we have Degree, we have the Zoo project. So these are basically some of the software implementations that are out there to allow you to publish your web processing services. So we have, I've already put there some lab that we can be able to use to be able to create our own web processing, web map service and web coverage service, as well as web feature service. So we are going to go for T, and then we can be able to come back. I hope that during this break, you can be able to download these layers so that when we come back, we can be able to start from this point. So when you download, for example, this GeoServer, what you get is basically, you get something like this. You get a folder like this. And with this folder, what you're supposed to do is you have to make sure that Java is installed on your computer. So for most of you, I think the Java is already there. So you install Java, and then this will be able to run the GeoServer. You just have to double click, and the GeoServer has already started. You don't need to install it. So that's what basically we're going to use, and then I'll show you how to access it over the web browser and publish a data set. So thank you very much. In case you have any question, feel free to ask. And let's meet maybe at around 11 after you've taken your tea. So this is basically for you to go and take your tea, and then we can have our session at 11 again. So it has the tutorial, for example. And then we are able to extract this. So there is basically the tutorial that you can be able to use. So there's this tutorial here. So I'm going to basically maybe try to share this to you on Zoom. I don't know whether Zoom will be able to accept it. So you can basically access this zip that has the tutorial. So I've said that you download these two files, and then after you've downloaded them, now you extract the GeoServer folder. So when you extract it, this is what you get. For some of you, you may be able to see this icon looking for the start where I'm pointing. This icon should be able to look like mine, should be able to look like Java, you know, the cap and that sign of Java. But then if it doesn't look like that, it means that your computer does not have the JDK installed, the Java runtime installed, or the virtual disk. So you have to make sure that you install it first. If it doesn't have, mine already has. So you have to make sure that you install this Java. So it's always here, you just have to say Java. It's something that runs with most of the computers. So you basically get your JDK, and you can be able to download for your computer. So maybe you can say Java for Windows. Java download for Windows. If you have Windows, it should be able to give you something like this. If you don't have this software, you can be able to download it and install it. So I'm hoping that you all can be able to access, you can be able to access the resources. So we say that you type 1 in case you're able to download the GeoServer. Kindly type 1 in case you're able to download the GeoServer. We only have one participant who has done it. Please let us know that you're able to download the GeoServer by typing 1. So you have to install Java in case you don't have it on your computer. So we have only 2 participants who have this GeoServer installed. Please make sure that you have the GeoServer installed. Or maybe downloaded. You just need to download it. When you download it, if you can see this icon looking like this, if it doesn't look like this, it means that you're lacking Java. But if it looks the way it's looking here, then you can be very sure that we are having you can be very sure that now your GeoServer can be able to work. So you just have to double click this so that it starts. And if you double click that, you'll see nothing definitely, but at least it will have started behind there. So I'm still waiting to get a confirmation that you've been able to install the GeoServer. Okay, someone is asking me to share the link for the GeoServer. So I'll be able to invite you again to class so that you can be able to come to class. And I will also share the GeoServer here. Let me hope it will be possible, but so I'm sending you the GeoServer on Zoom. And if you're interested in downloading it yourselves, this is the link. So I've sent you the GeoServer online so that you can be able to access that folder. So it's a zipped folder. Once you get it, you just unzip it, and you should be able to get something like this for starters. Please let me know whether you've been able to download the GeoServer. That's for starters, because if you don't download the GeoServer, it means that this whole session, there's nothing basically you're going to do. So make sure that you have the GeoServer downloaded, at least for starters. So we have 3 participants only who have been able to download the GeoServer. So we are still waiting for the rest. Please make sure that you download the Geo server. Don't just look at the screen. So I'll give you maybe 3 minutes or 4 minutes to make sure that you download the Geo server. So everybody is going to download the Geo server. So let us know if you've downloaded the Geo server. Type 1 in case you've downloaded the Geo server. And in case you've not been able to download the Geo server, please download it. Please let me know when you have a problem. So at least we have now 5 participants with the Geo server. 6 now, so at least we need some other more participants. Make sure that you have the Geo server. These things become very easy if you do them practically rather than just listening. Okay, at least now we have around 7 participants. So I'm waiting for my colleague. Looking this way. So make sure that the icon looks like the Java icon. If it doesn't look like the Java icon, you just simply know that we need to basically install GeoServer. So the icon should look like this. You need basically to install GeoServer. I don't know that you can access the classroom, the Google Classroom. So if you can access the Google Classroom, I've already done for you all the work. So you just need to download this file and also download this one. So these are the files that you need to download. So this file has the software, the GeoServer software. And this file has the tutorial. So that's what the file has. So if you can be able to download these ones, then it becomes easier. So for some people, of course, if you get a hitch in downloading, you just have to click here. And then you'll see that maybe there's no download button. You just have to continue here and say open in a new window. Then it will give you the download option here. You can click here and then it will be downloaded. So once again, download these two folders, and then one of them has the instructions, another one has the GeoServer file. But alternatively, engineer, you need to basically send your email so that I can be able to log into the class in case you want to log into the class. So you send your email and then we log you in. But I've already sent all these links I've already sent them in the, you can see that we already have the link to the GeoServer, so you can be able to get your GeoServer. I've already sent the lab material, which is in here. You can be able to download the lab material. I've also been able to send the Java link in case you don't have Java on your computer. So you can check your emails to be sure that basically you've been logged in. Please type 1 in case you've been able to have your GeoServer installed. We want to make sure that everybody can be able at least to publish services. If maybe Adrian, you're already there, you just need to look in your spam folder maybe, so that you can be able to accept to enter the class, but you're already there. So you just need to look into your spam folders for those ones who may be registered and you're not appearing in the class, because I made sure that everybody is enrolled and you had just to accept. So please type 1 in case you have the GeoServer. My friends, have you been able to get the GeoServer? I want to make sure that everybody has the GeoServer before I can start doing anything. So make sure that you have the GeoServer. And once you download it, this is what happens. You download it and unzip it, you'll get something like this. So you should get such a kind of icon. If you don't get this icon, it means that your computer does not have Java. So your computer must have Java installed previously for you to have to run this kind of thing, because your server is based on Java. So if you can manage to get to this point, then we can start opening up your server. So you just have to double click this. And if you double click it, nothing of course will seem to happen, but it actually has started the server. So the server has already been started. All you need to do, okay, I have some messages. Okay. I'm going to log you in later on. So all you need to do is to make sure that, moment. So once you have double-clicked this, this button here, there's something like start. Once you have double-clicked it, then you just have to go to your browser. It means that your server started a long time ago, open a new tab, just empty tab. And all you need to type there is localhost, because the server is existing on your computer. Localhost. Then put the port. Your server usually listens on 8080. If it doesn't work, maybe it's listening on 8081. But usually these are the ports that it usually uses, 8080 or 8081. And then you say GeoServer, and then you say web. So I'll copy this and paste it. So after you've done your double clicking, make sure that you can be able to after you've done your double clicking, then you can type this in your browser and then click it and see what happens. So when I do this, this is what happens for me. So I get something. For you, you'll have it empty here, username and password. So this is how it will look like. So we have our first GeoServer instance. You don't need to install it. You just need to double click, and then you just use the link that I've just sent you. It's GeoServer. Rather, the link is localhost. Then you put 2 dots. Then you put 8080, which is basically the port. And then after you stroke basically the web, and then you basically have something. So I want to be sure that in the next 4 minutes, everybody has reached this page. If you've reached this page, type 2. If you have reached the page that I have, type 2. So if you've reached that page, type 2. So we have some people who have gotten there already. So the reason why we are learning this is because one day you'll want to share your data with people, and you basically want to share it as a service. And especially in this time of, in this COVID time, you can imagine this has come in handy because you don't need to go and pick the data, but rather you share it as a service, and then things work out well. So kindly make sure that you tell us whether you've been able to access that page, and type 2 if you've been able to access that page. I'm seeing the numbers are not so many. So I want to make sure that everybody is with us. Type 2 if you see this page. If you don't see that page, you let us know where you have a problem. Please let us know. I'm only saying we have 2 minutes again for people to let us know where they have reached. If maybe you're left behind and things are not working out, let us know also. First of all, I said that you download the GeoServer, you extract it into a folder. For example, I've extracted mine in this folder. If it has this kind of icon, the icon looks like this, it has a Java cap, then you can be very sure that your GeoServer will work. If it doesn't have anything and it's just a white icon, then it means that your computer doesn't have Java. And so I sent you the link for downloading Java for Windows. For those who have no Java, if you have Windows, this is the link. And then you can be able to install the Java. Once you install the Java, you restart sometimes you need to restart the PC, sometimes it will work automatically depending on maybe how your PC is set. And then this icon is going to change and starts looking like a cup, like Java cup. So things are not working. Eh? It's not working. First, go back to the folder. You must have a folder called your server. You first have to download this folder called your server. So we don't have the folder. So you need first download it. Eh? It's that folder actually that's running.
Which folder?
Called your server. You need to download this folder here. So for it to run, you need to make sure that you download that folder. You need to install Java.
Yeah, she's installing.
Okay. Yours has worked. Good news. So you can help my colleague here, my colleagues. So we have maybe some people in the lab here have been able to install at least. I don't know how many people have been able to get to that page. But I see that there are very few on the online. So I want to make sure that you can be able to do this work. So now in this folder, lab 1.3, there is a tutorial that you can follow and you get wherever you want. So in case you have already finished, you can follow that tutorial and it will be able to take you to the end. So this is the tutorial. You basically double click the icon and then you put in this link and then everything will be able to work. Okay. So something is happening. Amon has been able to do it. So, and Amon has just joined the class just shortly. So once you have this page, you'll see the username. The username, the default one is admin. You put admin. And the password is geoserver, small case. So the password is geoserver, the username is admin. So password is geoserver, rather password is geoserver, and username is admin. Those are the default ones for any that you download. Eh? Oh, I need to. So password if you put them in and log in, you should be able to come to this. So you're seeing me the other time using links. These links actually were basically a GeoServer instance for regional center. So they basically created something like this in the regional center. So what we're supposed to do is, of course, the first time when you get into this GeoServer, you'll figure out that it's very possible for you to view all the layers that are available. So for example, we have one layer that's available here. But then we also can be able to create our own layers. So what you have to do is to basically create your own workspace. So you'll have to click Workspace. So let us type 3 in case we've been able to log into the GeoServer. Type 3 in case you've been able to log into GeoServer. Type 3 in case you're able to log into GeoServer. Okay, so this is good news. Many people are able to log into GeoServer. So once you log in, like I've said, if you click Layer Preview, you'll see all the layers that have been published. And for us now, we want to create, to publish. To publish. First of all, you should realize that there are different services here. For those who have not yet logged in, even they will tell you the versions. You'll have seen the versions on the sides. So for example, we have a web map tile service. We have a web coverage service. We have a web feature service. We have a web map service. It's very possible for you to add actually a web processing service on this GeoServer. If you can use their API and try their interface and be able to develop one. So what you're supposed to do basically is you create your own workspace. So I'm going to create a workspace called, I'm going to call it AGRC, for example, 2021. So that's going to be my workspace. Now this thing only works when you put the link, rather you put here, for example, a link. You just have to specify a link, for example, www.mark.ac.ug. So just put in a link. So for me, I'm using this because this is just my particular persistent identifier that I use as Alan whenever I'm developing my applications. So maybe I'll borrow you this persistent identifier on Zoom so that you can be able to use it for all your work. So this is what I always use for all my applications, So this is my persistent identifier. It will never, if I created a website and I pointed it to this identifier, this website will never go off. And rather it will never break down because this one is directed to a permanent service. So I use this as my URL usually. So all you need to do is to save once you've created your, rather you've been able to put the name. So this name is your own making, not my own making. So you create a name according to what you think is, what you want to see. And then you save. So for example, my URI already exists. So maybe the unique identifier maybe already exists. Maybe I could do this. For you, it doesn't exist, I'm sure. So this is basically the URI, rather the workspace. Now, once you have created this workspace, we need to now connect to data. So you must have a database of data or maybe a folder having the data. If you don't have a folder having the data, then we have problems. So you still remember we had our architecture. Maybe I'll take you back to show you our architecture that we had before. We had this architecture. So we have now the GeoServer that basically is going to serve our data. But then now we need the data that we're going to serve. It must be in a folder or in a database or somewhere. So what happens is that you need basically to click on this workspace. So you'll allow me to first have a test run, and then later on, we can go together. So first look at what I'm doing. I first have created the workspace. When I click on this workspace, I have to enable the services that basically are capable. For example, web map service, web coverage service, all these services. And now once I've done that, I can save. Now I can even make it maybe the default workspace, potentially. Now, I need now to go to my stores, and I need to add a new store. So by saying that add a new store, I'm just trying to say, go to maybe connect to maybe a database, or maybe a shapefile folder, or maybe connect to raster data sources. So I'm able basically to specify what I want to connect to. So what you do is that you, for example, my data is in a folder. So I just need to go to this folder, say shapefile, and then I can say my data source file. I can just put there anything, for example, the name of my folder or anything. So maybe I can say GIS data. You can put a description, but this is not compulsory. And then you basically need to put where this data is found. So I'm going to search for my data where it is found. So I go to my directories, and I look for where the data is. So for example, I can look for conference, and maybe I look for the GIS data. So for example, we have the OSM roads. So once I'm done with this, I save. So it's like I've specified my data source, where the data is coming from. So I save. So now you have your data connected to the Geo server, but you've not yet published it. So you need to ask the Geo server to publish your data. So basically you have to state basically your coordinate reference system. So this is the coordinate reference system that's available. So you need to compute the bounding boxes that will be shown. You can decide also to project it, to make the default projection in a different coordinate system. So you can be able rather to select here a new coordinate system, and then you force declared. And then you compute the bounding boxes according to that projection system. Once you're done with this, then you have to go to publishing. Then in publishing, you basically have to choose, for example, your styles. So this data, maybe you'd want it to come as a line that looks like this, or maybe you want to choose a particular style. So these styles are actually first created somewhere. These are the default ones. But if you see the data was looking very nice, the one that I was presenting from regional center, these people first created these styles in the Geo server before. Now, of course, we are going to use the default one, and then I'm just going to leave it at that, but you can go ahead and check the dimensions or the tile caching or the security. You can add a key to it, or you can make sure that anyone can be able to read it. But once you're done with everything, you need basically to publish. So my data has been published. It is from the GIS data store, and then it is called OSM roads, and this is basically the title. So what happens is that if I go to my layers, my layer preview, or my layers, of course this is what I'll see, but if I go to the layer preview, you see that this layer has been added. And this layer can be accessed in all these formats as a web map service and a web feature service. So if, for example, I want to access it as GML, this is what it is. This is what the dataset has become. This is the GML dataset. If I want to access it as, for example, an open layers, this is how basically it will look like. And if I click here, it will tell me the info for this. So this is what basically we're accessing. And if I want to also get the capabilities of the server, I should be able to just say the service and then say the request is get capabilities. And then it will tell me the layers that basically the server has. So this is the request. We have to put the request equals to. So it will tell me what the server has. So what am I trying to do? I'm just trying to make sure that someone publishes this layer. After you publish the layer, then people can be able to access it. So only what they need to know is the link until that question mark. So they need to know the link until this point here. And then the rest is the GIS officer's business. Because the officer will know, with this expert knowledge, that there is a defined way, there are standards how we should be able to access this data. So let's go back to our tutorial. So this tutorial is actually available. So this is the tutorial. I hope you've been able to get the tutorial. If you've not been able to get it, I will send it again one last time. I'm going to restart so that we can be able to. Brian, I was trying to just have a run through so that you can see what I was doing, and then later on you can do it on your own. So once again, here is the, make sure that you have this file here. You have the file in this, you have this lab, you have a file for the tutorial from this lab 1.3. And once you have that, you need to make sure, okay, I'll log out of the Geo server. So what I'm just trying to say, if you've gotten to this point, all you need to do, all you need to see is that this server is capable of giving you data, publishing data as a web coverage service. We said here you have basically a raster that you can process. It has values. We have a web feature service if you want feature data to be served to you, and you can be able to use this data for your processing and other things. So these two of them are called data services because you can be able actually to access data with them and download it. Now the web map service and the tile map service and the web map, web map service context and the web map tile service, all these ones are portrayal services. So what happens that you have to log in? So you say admin, this is the default password, GeoServer. This is what you get. And I'm telling you that the first thing that you have to see is that you need to check out the layers that are available in the GeoServer. These are the layers that are basically available. But if you want to create your own layer, you need to basically create your own workspace. So the first step here, as you see these buttons, we have workspace, we have stores, we have layers, we have layer groups, we have styles. So if you want, for example, to create styles for your layers, you create them from here. So you can see these are the styles that I've created for the different layers. If you wanted to create different layers, we have to start with the workspace. So I want us to first create our first workspace. So we say that you go to add new workspace. You give that workspace a name. Me, I've already created my workspace. So if you've already created one, it's okay. You can add many layers under one workspace. So for example, mine is the AGRC, but when you create a workspace, you need to make sure that you put a URI to that workspace, like an identifier to that workspace. So for me, I already have created one. So I have created, for example, the AGRC workspace. Now, once you've created that workspace, you need to click on this workspace so that you enable the services that you want the layers in this workspace to have. Now, once you have gotten to tick these services, now you save. Once you have saved, now it is show time. We need now to add our layers. So you basically go to stores, and now we add data from a store. So if it's a database, you basically click here, and then you can be able to connect to your database. If maybe it is a GeoPackage file, you click here, and then you can be able to access the GeoPackage. If maybe it's in a directory of shapefiles, you do that. But if you just want to bring a shapefile, then you have to click here. If maybe you want to bring an image and publish it as a web service, web map service, for example, or coverage service, you click whichever format it is. And then if you want to get data even from other web services so that you have it as a cascading or maybe remote web map service, so you basically can be able to access also data from elsewhere, as from other services. So we are going to choose shapefile here. So if you choose shapefile, you need to come and choose the workspace. It's like a folder of the sort where you want to put your data. Once you choose this folder here, rather this workspace, you now come and say, state your data source name. For example, it is maybe called planning. For me, for example, I have data that maybe is in that folder or some, it doesn't really matter the name that you put there. Now, you need now to browse to where your data is. We already have folders we have a data folder actually that has already data where you can put your data. But you can also get your data from the external source. That's basically in directory D, rather C. And then for me, I have my data, for example, on the desktop. So for example, I have data in this folder. Now, should I remove this folder from my computer? The GeoServer will not be able to access this layer. So you need to make sure that the folder stays in one place or the database stays with the same credentials for logging in. The moment you change them, the GeoServer will not work. So for example, I can be able to access our boundaries, for example, the Uganda districts or sub-counties, or maybe health facilities or schools, so whichever. So for example, the schools layer, and then I can be able to say OK. So now the layer has been created, a new layer has been created. We've connected to the data source, and now we have the layer in the GeoServer. But it's not yet published, we need to publish it. So how do we publish it for everybody to be able to get it? We just basically click here, publish. So when you click publish, this should be able to publish the data set, literally after you've just computed the bounding boxes. So for example, you just come here and compute the bounding box. And it's very possible for you to also change the coordinate system. For example, you can change the coordinate system to be this WJ34. It's very possible. So that you can maybe, when you compute, you should be able to get from, you should be able to get now the degrees, means, and whatever, because of the EPSG. So you can compute from the bounds, or you can compute basically from the data. And then also this one also, it's very possible to compute from the data or maybe the bounding box. So what happens is that once you've done this, if you published it, it will still get published. But you can go ahead if you still need to play around, for example, with the styling. For example, you want your point to look in a particular way. So these points, you have to first define them in the style layer descriptor. And then you can also get to this tab and also check the dimensions, the tail caching, but these are not really so important. They are optional. So long as you've computed these bounding boxes, you just have to click here, compute from data. or maybe from the SRS. And then once you've done that, you should be able to save. When you save, your data set has been published. If you want to be sure that your data set has been published, you can go to the layer preview. So you'll see all the layers that are there. So you can see that this layer is there, and you can access it using various formats now. And if we open our layer, this is what we get. These now are schools. It's not yet styled because we've not yet styled it. We've just used the default styles. But we can be able to style it. Now, if someone wants to get this layer here, he can be able to write the typical. Of course, when you look at this link here, I'll try to put it in Notepad so that you can see what it is. So maybe I should use another whatever. So let me use maybe PowerPoint. If I paste it here, if you check very well, you realize that this is the same as the getMap capability request. Rather getMap request, not the capability request, but rather the getMap. So you have the getMap here, and then the layer that we stated, and then you have the bounding boxes, the ones that we computed. And then you have the height, the width, then the coordinate system, and the styles and the format. So this is basically what I'm doing in this small tutorial here. So I've already actually done the whole tutorial. And what you have to do is now, now that you have this, if you clicked anywhere, you'll notice that it will give you everything, all the info. That's the get feature info. You'll get all the info that are in the table, but you don't get the pixel values because it comes as a raster. Now, I've said that once you have created your server like this, all people need to know, they'll just need to know this link. This is what they need to know. This is the link that you give them. And then as a GIS expert, you need to know that once I have this link, it's very possible for me to be able to access the data that is in that server. So I hope that's very clear. Because if I have this link and I put it, for example, in my client, in my QGIS, let's try our QGIS and see. If I put it in my QGIS here and try to access our localhost, let us access the Geo server that we have installed. So Brian, I don't know whether you're still following. So let us know. So for example, if I go to layer now and I want to add this same layer, if I want to add it here, that's the web map service, right? So if I make a new connection, let me call it maybe our local Geo server instance. So we put our link until this question mark. This is starting with the localhost, the one that we've just worked on. If we say OK and we connect, you see it goes there and picks all the layers that we've just published. And then you can actually access these layers in what? In Quantum GIS, just like we're accessing them in the browser, as you can see. You'll access also the roads, just like we're accessing them, as you can see. But now these are rasters. They are not vectors, as you can see. If you try to right-click them and open the attribute table, it's not there. So the other thing that you can be able to do is to access them, for example, as web map service. So people out there will be accessing them as a web map service, rather web feature service. So let's try and see. If we create a new connection and we just say maybe Wfs local, just call it that maybe. If we connected, these are the layers that are actually there. And now I can actually query. I can build a query and I say, okay, I only need, for example, I want to select only schools that maybe are found, maybe I want to select, moment. So you can be able to build a query and say, select from UG schools, maybe you select some columns. For example, I can select where there is school type, then maybe, no, maybe here where select from schools where the school type is equal to, for example, school type is, okay, you need first create the query, of course, to be able to do it. So maybe now I've not yet created it, it will take me time. So in the interest of time, maybe I can always put it on the drive so that you can be able to get it. But you can be able to query particular sections of the data, and you don't need to have all the data. Or alternatively, you can have all this data set here, so you can be able to add it. So you realize that for the web feature service and the web maps, rather the web feature service, you have points, lines, and polygons. But here you had, for the web map service, you have rasters. Now, if you open, for example, the schools here, you see that you have an attribute table for the web feature service. But then for the web map service, you don't have. Well, it's still coming because of, it's because it is a little bit heavy. So that you need to create indexes for the data so that the data comes very fast. So that's basically the problem. So at times you have too much data in the server that you need to specify a particular bounding box. You don't have to pick everything, or maybe you have to query it. So that's what is happening here. So the data is too big, and then it will take some time to work out. So once again, I want to be sure that maybe you've been able to publish a layer. So that's what I just want to know. Have you been able to publish a layer? Let me know by typing 5. Type 5 if you've been able to publish a layer. Amon, you're asking, can one collect field data and sync directly onto the Geo server? Now, you need to basically change these services because we told you that we have sensor alert and sensor observation services. So you can be able to change them. So long as the data is already existing, you can create a small script that basically picks this data and then publishes it on the Geo server. It's very possible. So let me know if you've been able to publish your data on the Geo server. So for those who have not been able to publish your data, this is the tutorial that we follow, as the tutorial that I've followed. So you download, you have already the shape files, I've already provided them to you. So you don't have to get them from the Dropbox, but I already provided them to you. So I'm waiting. Please let me know that you've been able to publish a layer. We only have 6 people who have been able to publish a layer. Let me check on my colleagues in class if they've been able to publish a layer. Okay, let me, you can be able to get the regional center link. You have it? No, this one won't work because it must be installed here. But then you need the, like, there's one for, do you have the PowerPoint presentation? Yeah, you can just use the one on, so not the second one for the web services. Yes, no. This is the one for this one. So there is a link that I put there. So we can access one of these instances, for example, this one. And then I show you the Agile server. Yeah.
So is it the folder, I think?
Yeah, you can just type this in here. Type this from here until your server only, and then press enter. Yes. You have to go to the data store, click on the data stores, and then add the new data store. And now we can add your shape file. And then that's already there. Put the data source name, put there anything. Then browse. And then you click around here. Then you can click around here so that you can be able to access. So you can use even data that you have already, like shape files if you do have. Yeah, any data that you have. You have to click on this backspace, yeah, that thing there. Yeah, and then you save. So you can now publish it. So that's the Agile server. But you don't have credentials to log in. But the best thing you can do on this Agile server is access all the layers that they have. So you can even actually see them from here if you want to access these layers. So, for example, maybe something's coming. Yeah. So these are the layers that they have. Click here, something happens. Now, this same GeoServer, if you have until here, this link, and you come to here, and you, okay, let me do it from here. Just put anything here, maybe a something. Okay. If you connect, you should be able to get all the layers that they have in that server.
So how come
They are coming. I think it's internet, but they are coming. See? And you can be able to add, these. So it will get added here. See? Yeah. So that's how you access that data.
Yes. You published it? Go to layer preview. That's not yet published. Go to layers. Go to add new layer. Choose. So it's there. Publish. Come down. You have to first click this, the compute. And then also compute. If you now save, it will work. So now it is there. If you go to layer preview, it's there. Now if you click any of these, you can access, for example, then if you click here, it will bring the what? And if you got this link from here up to there until the question mark and put it into your software, you'll be also be able to get the web feature service. Yeah, web feature service, coverage service, or whatever. I don't know. Why is it?
That's fine.
It's supposed to. I don't know why it does that. Maybe you can redo it and then I'll help.
Please let us know if you have been able to publish a layer. So my colleagues here in the lab have been able to publish. So I'm just saying if you have your Geo server and you just have to come to Workspace, create a new workspace. After creating the new workspace, you need to go to Stores so that you access, you create a new, get data, connect the data to the Geo server, either from a shapefile or PostGIS database. And then once you're done with that, the layer will be created here, but it will show you that you need to publish it. You click Publish, and then you can be able to compute. Let me add a new layer so that you can be able to. Let me be able to add a new shapefile rather. I connect the store, you add from the store, and then you need to basically connect to the data sets. And then make sure that you have okay, so maybe I'll go back and just get from, okay. Maybe this is the data set, and then you have to give it anything. So you can put anything here, whatever is meaningful to you. And then you save. Now it will tell you that you have to publish it. If you don't publish it, it will not, you will not see it in the layer preview. So when you click here, there is one compulsory thing that you have to do. You need to come and specify your coordinate systems here, and then compute from the, either from the data or from the one that you've stated. And then also compute here. If you do this and you click save, it will it will get published. And if you still want to style it, then you can come here and choose the line that you want to use for styling. Once you're done, you save. When you finish, this layer will be published here. And if you went to the layer preview, it is there. And you can be able to click any format that you wish to get it. So here I can get it as a TIFF, or you can get it as just this open layers. And it's this link actually that we add into our web maps, and then it will be able to visualize. So let me know that you've been able to publish. We only have 6 people online who have been able to publish. So we want to be very sure that you've been able to publish so that I show you another thing that we've been doing and maybe you've not been realizing. The last thing, and then we can go for our lunch. So in this case, we've been able to publish our own data. In this case, we've been able to publish our own data. But remember, do you still remember that in our PowerPoint, we had these links that I was showing you? These people created their Geo server instance. So we've created our own instance, but also in Regional Center, for example, they have over 1 instances. They have 2 instances. So I can access their Geo server online. So we can access their Geo server and see what is there. So it's very possible to just come and say, okay, let me just type this. And then you'll be able to see their Geo server. This is their Geo server, but I can't log in because I have no password. And I can see all the layers that they have. And I can access these layers if I wanted. So that's how I was able to get this small URL, the short URL here that I was using to put in my software to be able to access all the layers from this GeoServer. So for now, just get to know that we have to install the GeoServer, and then we basically publish these layers using the GeoServer, and then we can be able to extract this short link and then be able to use it, also to say this kind of link, be able to use it to make our requests to the server. The first thing that we do to the server is to ask it for its capabilities. The next thing that we do is maybe to request for the maps, and then there are so many other operations, but these are the most 2 important operations. And then we said that it should be, rather you can be able to access this data in your client, but you can also be able, rather in the software client like ArcGIS or Quantum GIS or any other like UDIG or Saga or other software. But then we can also be able to access it on the browser. It is platform independent. It is also operating system independent, all development environments independent. So that's what basically we have. So let us know if you've been able to publish datasets on the GeoServer. That's what we want to know so that we can be able to close the class. In case you have questions, feel free to ask. So we give ourselves 3 minutes so that we can be able to finish the class and have this pre-conference workshop closed. So in 3 minutes, we shall be closing. We are just waiting for your questions. So please send your questions, your concerns, so that we can see whether we can be able to help. Thank you very much. I beg just to stay here and listen to you and also wait for your questions. Thank you very much.